I'm going to confirm this. The internet has been latent lately. I don't know if you've noticed that or not.
It's planned.
I actually think we are live. Excellent. Welcome to Revolution Network. This is Dr. Jason Dean. I am here with, as I said before we went on air, one of my favorite people in the world, and I literally mean that. I mean, I have colleagues around the world. I have people who I don't even know around the world, like Dr. Tenpenny, and she is one of my favorite. Dr. Tenpenny, welcome to the show. Thank you for being here.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, Jason. It's going to be fun. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. And before we get started, because we're going to be educating a lot of people tonight on a couple different subjects, but I would like to have you give your background to everyone, a kind of a summary of who you are, what you do, because some people know you, but some people don't know you. We have a lot of newbies here, and just give them a background of who you are and what you do every day.
Well, my background is that in my first career, when I graduated from medical school, I'm an osteopathic medical doctor. And a DOS, for a lot of people who don't know what a DO is, it's like being an MD and a chiropractor. And I chose that career path because I come from a multi-generations of chiropractors, actually. And my grandfather and my father, 3 uncles and 2 cousins were chiropractors. So I've been adjusted since I was newborn.
Nice.
So, excuse me. So when I decided I wanted to go to medical school, I chose purposely to become an osteopath. And I'm one of those, what they call 10-fingered osteopaths, because I do a lot of manipulation in the office. So it's really cool. And so my first career, I was the director of a level 2 trauma center in Findlay, Ohio. I was the director of an ER and a full-time ER doc for 12 years. And then I moved to Cleveland in 1996 to start an integrated and a holistic practice here in Cleveland, Ohio. The suburb is actually in Middleburg Heights. It's actually a suburb of Cleveland, but it's in Cleveland. So I've been doing that since 1996. I still see patients 2 to 2.5 days a week. We are open for business right now, and in spite of all the shutdown, so that's a really good thing. We've slowed down a bit, but we're still, plugging along, so we're still seeing patients. And then in September of 2000, I got a flyer in the mail to go to the National Vaccine Information Center meeting in Washington, D.C. for a conference on vaccines. And I'm not exactly sure how I was even on their mailing list, but every time I tried to throw that flyer in the trash, it ended up back on my kitchen counter. So I said, well, for some reason I'm supposed to go there. And so I thought, well, maybe there's somebody important I need to meet there. Maybe it's somebody. And I didn't realize until after I'd been there and listened to it for 4 days and listened to scientists and doctors and attorneys and parents of vaccine injured kids and panels of people that I realized it wasn't about somebody, it was about something that I was supposed to learn this information. So when I came back and I started my investigation, I kept going deeper and deeper down the rabbit hole. And I will tell you, about a year later, I was sitting upstairs in my upstairs office. It was like 2:00 in the morning, and I was reading all this material, and I found some things that really made me cry. They were so disturbing about how doctors are taught that vaccines don't cause any problems, and if a child has a seizure disorder, has an autoimmune reaction, or even dies after a vaccine, the problem wasn't the vaccine. The problem was the defective child. And I actually read that in a CDC document, and it was kind of one of those Norman Rockwell moments when I'm looking out the window and there's a little bit of snow coming down. I was just crying because it was just breaking my heart. And I just said, God, why did you give me this to do? Why didn't you give me the Tony Robbins Go Team Rah Rah stuff? Why didn't you give me that one? And I just heard him say to me, because you were willing to do the work. And so it was really, so it's like a God calling for me to tell people that vaccines are not safe, they're not effective, and they do cause problems. And so I've been doing this since then, since September of 2000, this is what I do most of the time when I'm not in the office seeing patients. And so I've written a couple of books. We have lots of online courses that we do. I speak all over the world. I did a lot of radio, podcast, television. And so my job in life is really to help people get ahead of the curve, to help them just ask a few questions before they put their child on the table to the sacrificial gods of the pharmaceutical industry, and have them be injected with known carcinogens so that they become a customer for life of the drug companies.
God, so I love the way you talk.
Well, thank you.
Well, the funny part is I mean, I didn't have to do a ton of research on you because I've been following you forever, but I wanted to find out some of your latest stuff we were talking about. And I stumbled across the YouTube video. And by the way, a good friend of mine is Billy DeMoss. So we're in that kind of company. But I saw a Australian news, like a morning show or whatever, interview you before you got banned out of Australia or whatever. And I remember them asking you like, 3 or 4 questions, and she was so like elitist, and you handled them so well. But I could tell you were talking from a standpoint of, okay, I have to say certain words on this because it's a morning show, but I know how you really talk. And you have done, I don't know of anybody other than maybe Suzanne Humphreys possibly, and you guys are friends, but who has done as much research as you have done. So many people like to bounce off the fact, and I'm going to put it right out there, like I'm a chiropractor, so people call me crazy all day long. I get used to it. The medical profession doesn't like what we say about vaccines. And you have medical background because you're a DO. How much research do you think you've actually done?
I've spent almost 20 years. In September, it'll be 20 years, so 19 and a half years. And I've logged well over 40,000 hours, 40. And somebody asked me about that. They said, that's like 9 years, like nonstop, like 40 hours a week. I said, that's about right. Because every single day, I mean, when I'm not seeing patients, I'm sitting in this very chair and I'm spending about 18 hours a day, researching and writing and putting together PowerPoint presentations and working on various things that I'm doing or doing, preparing for talks. And there have been many, many, many times in my life when I'm taken 1, 2, and 3 weeks off from my office, full weeks, and holed up in a hotel somewhere, often in California, sometimes out of the country. And just, that's what I go there to do. And so I get up at like 8 in the morning and I'll have breakfast and I have little scheduled breaks in the afternoon to go for walks or whatever. But I'm there 18 hours a day, 7 days a week, sometimes for 3 weeks. And that's all I do is investigate problems with vaccines. And so that number, that 40,000 hours is really, I've actually crunched it a couple times. It's really real. I mean, I've looked at my calendar and I know how much time I spend on this. And I really am the go-to expert on problems with vaccines from all over the world. I mean, I've spoken at conferences all over the world, and and I'm always doing radio and television and podcasts. I mean, internet television. In fact, yesterday morning, I had to get up at a kind of a strange time to do an interview with an Italian investigative reporter, and people will call me from the UK, and I got an interview on Monday coming up with Richie Allen, who's in Scotland/UK, and I do things with David Icke and David Icke's son. I'm on his show a lot, and I spoke at Anarchapulco last year, and so I speak all over the place on this. And I always am looking for bigger opportunities to reach a different audience that haven't heard this before, because people right now, it's more critical than ever for people to understand what's coming through that needle.
Absolutely. And I want to dive into COVID-19, not right now. I'm going to do it towards the end because I read your articles. You have 2-part articles that are on your website, and we're going to go to that, but I want to be that kind of the end. But I want to educate the people here on the vaccine issue, because yes, the pandemic is a setup for something. However, this has been going on for a long period of time. Now, I was vaccinated when I was a kid, but that was back in '77. So I think I only had like a few. So many people say, and I get this all the time, is, well, you were vaccinated, nothing happened to you. What is the difference between, from your words, back then to today? Now, I know that, but I want you to really clarify that for people, because it's a big question people ask.
Well, one of the big problems is the sheer number of vaccines. I mean, up through 1985, there were only 3. There was MMR, DPT, and polio, and only a couple of doses of each one. Very few kids ever got the full 3 doses of polio, 3 doses of DPT, and the 1 dose of MMR. In fact, most of the kids during that period of time had measles. I mean, we had measles, mumps, rubella, chickenpox, all of those things. So we've gone from a few doses of 3 vaccines to multiple doses of 16 or 17 vaccines, depending on how you count them. And those vaccines have never been tested for synergistic toxicity with all the different chemicals and foreign proteins that are there. They've never been tested for antibodies to any of the foreign proteins. And on every single package insert you will read, there are a section in there that says this vaccine has never been tested for infertility, for carcinogenicity, which is the ability to create cancer, for teratogenicity, which is birth defects, or mutagenicity, which is the disruption of your genes. So vaccines have never been tested for that, and yet we are giving 4 and 5 and 6 vaccines, sometimes more, on the same day. And so when I talk to adults sometimes, and we get into this vaccine thing in my office, they're like, yeah, well, kids can get their vaccines. I said, do you understand how many doses they're actually getting? They get 72 doses of vaccines by the time they're graduating from high school. They're shocked. They're just blown away. They have no idea how many vaccines kids get, how many foreign bodies, how much aluminum. A fully vaccinated kid from birth to age 18 will have almost 12,000 micrograms or 12 grams of aluminum injected into their body. And that aluminum that goes into their arms is picked up by the macrophages, the white blood cells, transported to various organs in the system, can cross the blood-brain barrier and get permanently deposited in the brain. Permanently.
12 grams of heavy metals. That's insane.
And that's just the aluminum. And it's like a half a gram, like they still get over 500 micrograms of mercury, because mercury's in all the multi-dose flu shots. So, and then add in things like neomycin, polysorbate 80, 2-phenoxyethanol, beta-propiolactone, which is a known carcinogen, Triton X100, which is in every flu shot. And when it's injected into the body, it turns into ethylene oxide, which is a known carcinogen. And by Prop 65 is supposed to be labeled as such. Formaldehyde, potassium chloride, which is something that they used to kill people with, like when you do like when people are sentenced to death, on death row, they use high doses of potassium chloride. Well, what happens when you get small doses of potassium chloride? And so, and then all the foreign proteins, the cow blood, the chicken blood, the dog cells, the cells of aborted fetal tissue. I mean, it's just, there's a slide that I use on one of the presentations that I use on, it's a cartoon, and it's like a purple witch. And she's doing this whole thing. She's like stirring this whole pot. It's like boil, toil and trouble. That's exactly what all these vaccines are. Because I would say that for many, many years, all those years that I was working in the ER, I never knew any of this stuff. I never bothered to investigate it. I mean, the only thing that we really gave in the ER was tetanus shots, and I never even really looked into them. And so I think most everybody thinks it's what's coming through that needle as a little weakened or attenuated virus or particle of bacteria in a little sterile water. Like, what's the big deal? They don't have
it's clear liquid, so it looks like water.
Exactly. So they don't have any idea what's coming through that needle. And what coming through that needle can, this is another thing I say a lot, Jason, is that, vaccines do not prevent infection. I mean, we hear safe and effective, and we've been conditioned to believe that effective is a synonym for protection, and it's not. Because any of the vaccines that are on the market, including tetanus, you can get multiple doses of that shot, have very high antibody levels, and contract the infection anyways. So you've taken on all the risk with no prevention. So in my opinion, vaccines do not prevent infections. On the other hand, vaccines do cause disease. And what is the difference between an infection and a disease? An infection is something that comes and goes in 7 to 10 days, and most of the time leaves behind a real, true lifetime of immunity. And what is a disease? It's something that comes and stays and can often kill you. So vaccines can cause seizure disorders, autoimmune diseases, asthma, allergies, eczema, ADD, ADHD, problems with your eyes. It can blow out your lateral rectus muscle. I mean, I've got lots of reported cases of that. It can cause cardiovascular disorders. It can cause autoimmune problems. Those are diseases. So vaccines don't prevent infection. They do cause disease. Why is there any contention about whether or not you should vaccinate? I don't understand why there's why we even need to have this discussion. To me, it's just it's like the nose on your face, right?
Wouldn't you rather have like more fun, like problems to deal with in life than having to deal with like this whole thing that like we're having kids? But when you first started practice, what do you think, or do you know what the autism rate was at that point? Was it even measured?
Yeah, at that point in time, I remember, when I started doing this, so this would be like in September of 2000, I think the number that we quoted a lot was like the rate of autism was like 1 in 150. And now in certain states, it's like 1 in 27.
Yeah, I've heard nationally between 1 and 36 and 154, but then even Dr. Sineff talks about it being one in a couple within like 5 or 7 years based on what's going on. So we need more fun problems like how to fly out to other planets and stuff like that. We don't need to be fixing children that should never have been harmed in the first place. It's completely ludicrous.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well said. Well said.
Now, question for you, because this one always comes up too, and I'm going to clarify a couple of questions that I know that people hear often, and the people who are watching, some people are brand new, they've never heard this before, so it's for them too. When the polio vaccine name comes up, people always ask about this. Well, eradicated polio. Now, my understanding of it, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding was polio was mostly DDT. So what is your opinion on polio and the vaccine? Because I don't believe personally a vaccine has ever eradicated disease. I just don't believe the body works that way, but I'm also a chiropractor, so I think the body heals from inside out. But from a polio standpoint, what is your opinion on that, or your research, I should say?
Well, it's interesting because, we do a twice annual boot camp course. Are you familiar with our boot camp course?
I am. I just got to come to one.
Well,
it's time to get there.
Well, it's all online. You don't have to go anywhere.
I didn't know that.
It's an 8-week intensive course
Okay.
that we only offer twice a year. In fact, we're just at the tail end of it. Next week is week 8 of our spring boot camp course. We'll be offering it again in the fall.
Right.
And so it's 8 weeks. It's all done online. You get an online video. You get materials to read at home. The course module gets opened on Saturday. And then every Thursday night, we have an online discussion with Zoom, discussion about the course. And it's all recorded if you can't be there, and you can watch it. And you have a year access to the full course. So the first module is safe and effective, like we just talked about. The second module, it's a 4-part module about smallpox and polio. And the reason we do that is just because of what you absolutely nailed when you said that people that are new to this topic, that's the first default that they go to. Well, what about smallpox? What about polio? So we take a really deep dive into that and give people all the language skills. And then after that, just so I can tell you what the rest of the boot camp is about, the next module is about herd immunity and how to read a package insert. Because we walk people through that, because if you're not a medical person, it can be kind of overwhelming. Then we do a ramp up of the schedules and what's actually happened with vaccine tracking. And in between each one of those, we actually have my business partner does language training. So he teaches people how to communicate this information without heat, without losing friends, how to do it in an appropriate way. And then we talk about internet security. We talk about email security, because if you're going to be an activist and going to be online, you need to know about those things.
Agreed.
So that's kind of our boot camp course. And so inside of so to answer your question about polio was caused by a virus that never caused much problems until we started messing with it. And so, yes, it was activated by DDT. The polio virus actually does exist. It's the polio viruses, they're around. They're part of the polyoma viruses. But statistically, and this is what's so interesting, is that these are statistics from the CDC. And the CDC is like the ones trying to push this vaccine down your throat, right? And 97, back in the day, the polio vaccine came out in 1954. So back in the day, between 1950 and 1954, when there was a lot of wild virus around, and they were doing a lot of DDT spraying. So that DDT actually activated that virus. But without the DDT, 97% to 98% of people who actually had a polio virus infection, it was either asymptomatic or it passed through their system and looked like a stomach flu or maybe like a little food poisoning, and that was it. Another 2% of those people had what looked like was a viral meningitis, and then less than 0.0004, 3 zeros and a 4% of people who experienced a polio infection with paralysis ended up with some level of paralysis. And then 2% of that little tiny number were the number of people who ended up on a ventilator because they had bulbar polio, which affected their brainstem and made it so that they couldn't breathe. And even those people that had paralysis and had ended up on the iron lung machine, more than 98% of them fully recovered within 2 years.
Wow.
So yes, there's always the people who always say, well, my aunt had polio and she limped around in braces the rest of her life, right? Yeah, well, a few people do die from infections, and they do have complications. But to mass vaccinate the world over a teeny tiny number like that, and it's just been ridiculous. And the fact that the Western Hemisphere, so North America, Central, South America, has been declared polio free since 1994. We've had no wild polio 94, 2004, 2014, in 26 years, not one single case of wild polio, because the virus really doesn't exist much anymore. And even if it did, it would be mostly asymptomatic because we don't use DDT anymore. We're still giving our kids 4 polio shots.
Wow.
With formaldehyde and the potential for stray viruses and adventitious viruses, and there's absolutely no reason for it, none.
Now, when it comes to, so a couple of questions. The first one, and this is also all dealing with the nervous system at this point, but is Guillain-Barré syndrome essentially a version of what polio was doing? They just had to rename it, or is it different?
It's different.
Okay.
Because Guillain-Barré can be caused by a multiplicity of things. And Guillain-Barré is an ascending paralysis. It starts in your feet and goes all the way. It continues to spread up bilaterally, which is very characteristic of it. And if it gets to the diaphragm, then you've got breathing problems and you have to be on a ventilator and things like that. So, but any of the vaccines can cause Guillain-Barré. And there are other viruses for which we have no vaccines that can cause Guillain-Barré.
Okay. Got it. So that's how that takes us. Now, when we're dealing with I call them the 3-letter organizations, of which I'm not fans of, when it's CDC, NIH, you name them, all that. Now, I'm going to play devil's advocate here just for fun, and you can put me in my place. But aren't these organizations here to help us and take good care of us and look out for our health care when they make these vaccines?
Well, wasn't it Ronald Reagan who said the scariest sentence in the human language is, "Hi, I'm from the government. I'm here to help you"?
A very good quote.
And it's true. It's true.
Yeah, it's crazy. Go ahead. I didn't mean to cut you off.
Oh, no. I mean, they're not here to help us. They're here for a depopulation agenda. They're here to make people customers of life for the pharmaceutical industry, because that's what runs the world. Pharma money runs the world in every way you can think about it. And so if you can give away even free vaccines at the health department, or you have a vaccination day at your place of employment where they come in and give you flu shots and all of that stuff, if as a percentage of those people are going to become chronically ill. And I would say it's a very high percentage. It just doesn't happen right away. It might be days, weeks, months before they develop this autoimmune or neurological reaction. And then once that's happened, they are customers for life of the drug companies. And I think that every child, and this is just my opinion, that I think every child who's vaccinated, every single one of them is damaged. And it may not be something overt. It may not be like seizure disorder or encephalitis, encephalopathy, which then is the fancy medical word for autism. It may not be those. And maybe they look just fine on the outwards, but what if you just shave 10 IQ points off with each one of those vaccines? Mm-hmm. Just shave. And I was listening to a talk by Bobby Kennedy yesterday, actually, and he was talking about how this is since 1987, when they put the big push into really requiring the MMR vaccine. The MMR vaccine was approved for use in 1963, but they never really started really pushing it and hammering it for kids to get it till about maybe the early 80s. And he said that since 1987, it's been the first time ever that each generation, each set of kids, they go down in IQ points by like 3 points, which means they've had to lower the standards for SATs, ACTs, for LSATs, for medical school admission tests, because the kids just don't have any brain power.
Right.
Well, in 1991 is when they started to really, really push up that schedule. 1991 is when they added hepatitis B at birth and the Hib vaccine at 2, 4, and 6 months. And from there, the schedule has just continued to ramp up. And so each new vaccine that they add, they don't take any away. They just add more on there. And there's never been a vaccine that they've developed that they didn't love.
Did they alter the ingredients? So like, for example, MMR. MMR, and I'm a personal believer, and the research might show different, but I'm full agreement with you, by the way, that I think that's why they have a spectrum now that they can quote unquote diet. And this is the reasoning for saying, oh, well, we didn't have as good a diagnosis, because ultimately there really is a spectrum, because like I was vaccinated, for example, and I can have my ADD moments, but I think there's people very low on the spectrum like myself, and then there's people very high in the spectrum like non-functioning at all. And so I think one injection personally does it. Now again, it might be very small, it might be a tick, or it might be almost nothing, but it's there. Did they change ingredients as it went? So why is MMR such almost like a kill shot, or very, and I hate to use the word kill shot, I mean no disrespect for injured families out there, but what happened? Why did it accelerate so quickly? Is it just the number of vaccines, or is it the ingredients too?
It's the number of vaccines, and I wish that I probably can't do anything with share screen with you here, can I? Oh, I can.
Can you? See if you can. If you can, great.
I'm going to pull something up to show you that I think will be an eye opener here. Let me see.
If you fall off, just log off and come back on, and no problem.
Okay, I want to see if this will work. Nope, that won't work because I can't see the button. It's not going to work, so I can't see the button.
Okay. And worst case scenario, we can always post information afterwards too. That's not a problem.
Okay, so let me make this bigger. I want to show you guys something that I think that is going to be really a kind of eye-opening for some of your peeps. I just need to get the share screen here. Oh, to share screen, please install Be Live on Chrome. So let me see if that works.
While you look, is Dr. Tenpenny not amazing out there? We have a lot of viewers on right now listening in, and I am very appreciative for people like Dr. Tenpenny who put in so many hours of research into, I mean, you're kind of an encyclopedia, you know that, right?
Maybe, I don't know.
Okay, it actually pops up here. Let me see if I can bring this up.
Okay, now let me see. Oops.
Okay, I actually brought it out. I brought it up perfectly. Everyone can see it.
Okay, wait a second. Let me get to where I want it to be here. Okay, because I'm going to go through just a couple slides that you're going to see.
Oh, I love that this is up here.
So this is the vaccine schedule from 1983. So you can see DPT. So if you see down at the bottom, see MMR. This is answering your question, Jason.
Okay, sure.
So how MMR is at 15 months all by itself, right?
Yep.
So you have DPT, polio, DPT, MMR all by itself. And then by 1989, they've added in the Hib and hepatitis B. In 1994, there's hepatitis B, 3 doses of hepatitis B or an alternative schedule. Now they've added Hib across four doses. And look at 15 months. They got MMR and Hib. And they've added a second MMR at 5 years.
So they're doubling that up for no reason.
For no reason. This is 2002. Look here at 15 months now. Look what's happening at 15 months. We can do a third dose of hepatitis B. IPV is polio. There's MMR, chickenpox, and Prevnar 7. And 7 is like 7 vaccines all at the same time.
Oof. But so at what age?
Wait. So that's 2002. Look at today. This is the schedule for today. And look at where 15 months is. You've got a hepatitis B, a rotavirus, a Hib, Prevnar 13 now instead of Prevnar 7. You can get a polio vaccine, a flu shot. You get your MMR, a chickenpox vaccine, and hepatitis A. All of that.
I appreciate you putting that up so much, because I will tell you, most people I talk to don't go to the website, not because they're not willing, but it becomes very confusing. So when you have this up here, everybody, where you're looking at and she's explaining, that is massive, because that shows exactly what's going on. Yep. Now you said kids are getting, and I've heard this, but I want to clarify for everybody else, up towards this 6 at one time. Is that the most at one time?
Well, maybe, I don't know. Look out here at 15 months. I suppose they could give all those at the same time.
And that's in potentially 6 to 12 months. What year? How old is that?
That's 12 months to 15 months. So it's
12 months to 15 months. And how well could a 12 to 15 month old who might just be developing the immune system handle that at all.
They wouldn't. And when in nature you're going to be exposed to all those infections, all those pathogens at the same time. And when in nature does your immune system have to process and handle those all at the same time?
100%. That's insane.
So that's from our boot camp. That's one of the things we talked about last night. That's the ramp up of the schedules. But I think that visual of seeing where you were in 1983 to 2020 sort of like explains it all. And when you talk about there's never been any synergistic testing done to see about synergistic toxicity. I mean, what happens when you put all these things in a 10-pound or even a 20-pound little toddler at the same time? We don't know.
We see it all day. So I'd love to get you, before I dive into the next subject, which we're going to talk about, I want to know actually from you, because myself, the associates we all have in the office, we have a couple doctors and a couple nutrition associates. We see it all the time where someone comes in and usually it's a parent, and we have a damaged child, and the parent, who obviously they don't always have the degree of being a doctor, but I believe parents are the first doctor because they're the ones watching it. They know when something happens. We see it where the parent says literally they saw the change immediately after this date or this shot, wherever it was. What do you see in your practice? Because you see obviously a tremendous amount of these people.
Well, yes and no. And I just want to ask you, are you still logged on? Is everything still okay? Because I don't see the scroll up on the
we're good.
Because it's not scrolling up on my screen, but I just want to make sure.
Yeah, we're good on my end.
Okay. I don't treat vaccine injured kids anymore.
Okay, I didn't know that.
I used to, way back when I started this back in 2000 or early 2000s, probably up to maybe 2006, 7, maybe 2007 I did, but I don't treat vaccine injured kids anymore. And the biggest reason it's because I had when I first started this, I had so much empathy for the parents, and I felt so bad for the kids, and I wanted to do whatever we possibly could to make these kids better. But then it got very medicalized, and it became a very medical industrial thing. I mean, people have master's degrees in treating autistic kids, and then you've got OTPT, speech therapy, food therapy, for crying out loud, sensory integration things, and ABA and all this stuff. And first of all, I didn't want to practice in that area. And second of all, I'll be just brutally honest, I really didn't want to deal with the parents. When I started this way back in 2000, there was not any of this information out there. Think about it. Social media didn't even really get started till about 2004, 5, 6, 7. We didn't really have Facebook or Instagram or any of those sorts of things. And so now there's so much information out there. If you just look a little bit, we have so many educational resources. There's Highwire, there's Children's Health Defense, there's Green Med Info, there's all of these different things and if you don't take a little bit of time to find out what's coming through that needle, and you go and you break your kid, right. I have very little empathy for you. I'm not the doctor you want to see. I'm not. Because I'm just not the doctor you want to see. I have no empathy for that. People are like, oh, I should have looked. Yep, you should have. And you have a zillion resources out there. Somebody told me, this was probably 7 years ago, that there were like 700 or 800 anti-vaccine Facebook pages. And so if you don't take a little bit of time to know what's coming through the needle and ask appropriate questions like, what's the downside of getting chickenpox, and what's so risky about measles, and why should I worry about pertussis, and the pertussis vaccine doesn't work anyways, and you go through that whole schedule, and sadly your child is damaged or really severely damaged, I'm really sorry, but I don't have any empathy for that.
I don't blame you, and I understand that completely, because I have many colleagues out there who say the very exact thing, and I believe, and honestly, transitioning off that, because it's perfect transition, is we have fallen asleep at the wheel in America, and that's exactly why we're in the position we are with this pandemic, because literally everyone should have rose up at the very beginning and said, absolutely not, 100%. You have Bill Gates, Dr. Fauci, you have all these people pushing something, and I think we're waking up quickly, but I still think 95, 98%, 99% of the country is still fast asleep, to the point where you said they'll just have something injected. It looks like clear water, but we know what's actually in it. And have you seen that as well, where people are just falling asleep at the wheel?
Absolutely. Now, I tend to be, Jason, I tend to be the more of a glass half full than a half glass empty person. And I'm a really big believer in taking lemons and making lemonade.
I love it.
And I think that one of the most important things that have sort of come out of this, shelter at home stuff is people have been watching the television and things that they're talking about this vaccine. And I think there's a section of society that's going, oh yes, please give me the vaccine. I can't wait to just roll up my arm and just get it, which I want to address in just a minute.
Yep, we're gonna.
And it's going to be really good. And then there's another set of the population that's going, what the heck? Really? They're talking about mandatory. Wait a minute. Wait a cotton picking minute. They aren't going to be injecting me over this stuff. Because I hear that all the time. It's like, go inject the kids, but don't inject me. I hear it in my office. I hear adults say that. And I think that there have been a lot of people that it's kind of gotten onto their radar screen that it never even crossed their mind before. Because I'm seeing it in our social media is just going through the roof. I mean, and I'd really love all you guys here to come and follow me on my Instagram page, which is just Dr. Tenpenny, Dr. Tenpenny. Follow me on my Instagram page because it's just blowing up. It's just going through the roof. We're posting a lot. We're getting really good responses. Dr. Tenpenny on vaccines is our Facebook page that I don't use a lot, and Busy Dr. T. Busy Dr. T is my Twitter account. But our Instagram page is a lot, and all of a sudden, and I'm hearing it. There was a conference call I was on earlier today. It was really long, and it had all the vaccine movers and shakers on this call. It was 35 of us for 4 hours, and we were talking about strategy. It was like me, Del Bigtree, Bobby Kennedy, Mary Holland, Larry Palevsky. I mean, all of us. We were all in this big call, talking about strategies, and everybody's social media there is all blowing up, which tells me that's a really good thing. That means that there's a lot of people that are going, wait a cotton pick a minute here. We're not doing this. Now, the other end of that scale of the people that are like, oh, please vaccinate me. Can't wait till you vaccinate me. It's a psychological operation. It's a PSYOP. Yep. And it's part of the National Vaccine Plan that they introduced in 2010. And then they rolled out the adult vaccination plan in 2015. Part of they had some goals inside of the adult vaccination plan, and one of the goals was to convince adults to demand to be vaccinated.
Sorry, did I laugh out loud on that?
Yeah, convince them that they need to increase the demand to be vaccinated. So all these little subliminal messages that you're hearing about the vaccine's coming, it's coming, vaccine's coming, we're starting the clinical trials, it's all psychological, social programming. And what people don't understand is that in 2005, there was a law that was put into place. It's called the PrEP Act. It's the Preparedness and Response and Public Readiness Act. It's called the PrEP Act for short. The PrEP Act took the 1986 Injury Compensation Act and put it on steroids. And it only comes into play during a pandemic or a declared emergency. And during which time there's a pandemic or a declared emergency, that the pharmaceutical industry can tap into Project BioShield, which is an unlimited source of funds for them to develop their products. And they can develop a medicine, a pill, a potion, an IV, a biologic, or any vaccine, and have complete liability protection for anything that comes through that needle. Which means if they inject 1,000 people and 1,000 people get injured or die from this vaccine, the only recourse you have against the pharmaceutical industry, the doctor, the nurse, the hospital, the government at all, is for a class action to convince Bill Barr, our Attorney General, that the nefarious pharmaceutical company actually had willful intent and they were creating a product to intentionally harm you. Then they can move that forward with an action. And so, and what the drug companies are going to say is like, hey, We were just trying to be in a great big hurry because you wanted this vaccine like fast. And part of the law says that I can fast track this. I can bypass animal studies. I can bypass small group studies. And we can, as soon as we test it in a few people, we can launch it in large scale. And then that becomes the real clinical trial. And when did the PrEP Act get enacted? Right now, March the 17th. Alexander Azar, our great pharmaceutical buddy inside of that's head of HHS, put it in the Federal Register to enact and put into play the PrEP Act effective March the 17th. So all this development of these vaccines are doing right now, you have no idea what's going to come through that needle. It can be microchipping, it can be nanotechnology, it can be any chemical they can think of. It could be a combination of different things that they're just trying this, because they tried to do coronavirus vaccines in the past. They've tried it because there are 36 different strains of coronaviruses out there in the universe that we're aware of. And they have been around for 60 years, 60. They've been around for 60 years. And on any given year, 40% of the influenza-like illness worldwide is caused by a coronavirus, one of the 4 strains of those 36. So, that's a lot of infection. So they've tried to come up with a vaccine before. And when they tried it in experimental animals, when they put the vaccine into the animals, either 1 or 2 of the vaccines, when they re-exposed the animal to the coronavirus, most of the animals died. And it was this whole accelerated autoimmunity stuff. And it's why Peter Hotez and Paul Offit and all these people are saying, wait, be careful with this vaccine because there's this accelerated autoimmunity to it. And so all these people that they're conditioning them to please vaccinate me, you have no idea what's going to come through the needle. And it may be just fine after you get your first and second shot, wearing your mask and your gloves, of course. But then when you get re-exposed to whatever this virus is that's out there in the universe, there could be a lot of people hurt and a lot of people dead.
Yeah, that's no fun. That's insane. And I actually think that I heard, and I don't know if this had anything to do with you guys' meeting today, but I heard either there was a podcast with RFK Jr. on it, or there was an article. I don't remember which one I saw or if it was I heard, but basically I heard that they are trying to bypass the animal studies on this vaccine.
They already are. They've gone straight to humans. I mean, there's several different companies. They've gone straight to humans for safety testing. So I want to know what they're using as the placebo. Are they using a flu shot as the placebo? Because we know that vaccines have never, ever, ever been tested for safety against a true placebo, except a couple of teeny tiny little trials that are irrelevant. But the vast majority, all the vaccines that are approved on the schedule, all the new ones that they bring to market, I mean, you give, it would be like, you get the experimental vaccine, Jason, and I'm supposed to get the placebo, which is supposed to be a shot of sterile water or something like that. Well, nowadays they use a separate vaccine that has been approved for use and been declared to be safe. And usually, and they don't even call it a placebo anymore, they call it a comparator. So I assume that once they get into a little bit larger clinical trials, they're going to use this new COVID-19 vaccine and the comparator vaccine. I'm not much of a betting person, but I'd put a big chunk of money on this one, that comparator is going to be the run-of-the-mill flu shot. And they're going to say the side effect profile of the new COVID-19 looks just like the placebo, which is a flu shot. Now, I don't have any proof of that, but I just know how they work. And I know that in 2016, the international organization that controls human experimentation, whether it be drugs, biologics, or vaccines, they made it so that you only under specified conditions were you allowed to use a true placebo anymore, because it was not necessary. And if you tried to set up a true vaccine trial using a true placebo, it was considered to be unapproved, maybe even illegal. That what you have to do now if you're bringing a new vaccine to trial is you have to use in the control group a vaccine that is similar and has already been approved and declared to be safe and effective. That's why I'm a pretty good bet that once they go to larger clinical trials, that this new vaccine is going to be compared to a flu shot.
Now, unless that is stopped, which you and I both hope happens and something goes down before that, how fast do you think they have this thing ready to go to quote unquote the mass public?
Well, it's pretty interesting because that was one of the things that came up today in that big meeting that we had. And I don't remember who said this, but there was one person who said, we were talking about whether this was possibly, laboratory fabricated or was it intentionally released? And, there's lots of theories about that. And one person said, which I thought was pretty interesting, was they felt that this was, it was probably going to be released, but that somebody screwed up and somebody released it way ahead of time. Or either they released it way ahead of time or it really wasn't released. It was just something that happened. Because if it was really, in their perfect world and how they do things, they would have had a vaccine ready already.
Right. Yeah. They totally, I mean, whatever they did, something was screwed up because there's no way they wanted Bill Gates this exposed like this, and he's getting hammered. So something.
He's getting hammered.
You're right. Something had to have gone wrong, or we had the playbook or something like that, because it doesn't make sense on why they would allow him to get hammered like this. And their whole ship, I mean, hopefully it's going down for good, but it's rocky right now. Like, they are getting exposed. I mean, would you have expected the World Health Organization to be defunded and get exposed? Would you have expected any of these media stories to come out? I mean, this is amazing stuff.
This was it was interesting because I had that interview Wednesday morning with that Italian investigative journalist, and that was her first question to me was two-part question. Number one, would you have ever imagined, even 3 months ago, for the World Health Organization to have been defunded by America? And the second follow-up question was, what is your opinion about that? And I at first would be absolutely not. I mean, who would have known? I mean, first of all, most of the people in America don't even pay much attention to the World Health Organization or to Gavi or to the Gates Foundation or to UNICEF or all those organizations they should be paying attention to. So first of all, I think most Americans are kind of like, okay, whatever. But here's the thing. If you ever look at an org chart, an organizational chart of the UN, the World Health Organization isn't even part of it. I mean, here's the UN and all the things inside of it. There's a line over here. It goes like this. The World Health Organization's over here because it's mostly funded by the Gates Foundation.
Right.
And UNICEF has like a dotted line that goes over to it. And what happens with all of those things when they set up all of those medical lines to ostensibly to deliver drugs and vaccines to those poor people in the middle of Africa who are so suffering and need to be vaccinated, right? Mm-hmm. What ends up with those lines is they end up to be human trafficking lines. It's lines that they run drugs along and weapons along and under the umbrella of UNICEF. And so there's a really sordid story there that, not very many people know about. I've taken a deep dive down that rabbit hole a couple of times, and it's pretty nefarious. And I think that, if, you said you were a Q follower. I mean, one of the big things about Q is like dark to light, right?
Right.
All that's dark is going to come to light. Even the Bible says that, right? In these times, the darkness will go away because darkness cannot exist in light. And so we're at that point in time where dark to light. Yeah,
I believe this is biblical for many reasons, but it's so funny whenever something happens in the news, and then we've come into this society now where I think everything's slowed down because a week feels like a month now because the news cycle is so intense at this point.
It's so short.
You'll have a big story, but then you'll have like half a day to a day where it's kind of quiet. Everyone's like, oh, nothing's happening. And then you get the WHO defunded. And, anybody who's in healthcare or even natural healthcare is like, that is like that rocked the planet right there. That is massive. But I truly believe the fact that this darkness has been so horrible that I agree with you. As much as I think there's a lot of people out there who are not paying attention, I believe we are waking up the masses very, very fast at this point. And that obviously is important because that's the only way we can shift this whole thing. And I know you're working with some powerful people on your end to make this go even faster and obviously save as many kids as possible. I want to ask about a couple
of adults.
Oh yeah, totally.
We forget about the adults all the time. We always talk about save as many kids. There, I testified in federal court twice for vaccine injured adults. So it's about saving human DNA. It's about saving all of them. All of them is where we need to stay in that space, Jason, because I feel like we're living in kind of like the times of Noah, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like for 20 years I've been saying it's going to rain. It's going to rain, people. It's coming. I'm telling you, and you get laughed at and all this other stuff. As Noah's building the ark, right? I'm telling you, you better get right. It's going to rain one of these days, and everybody's laughing at him.
Do you know the derivation or the origin of the word quarantine?
Yes, it's 40 days.
40 days. That's the derivation and the origin of the actual word quarantine. And it's funny because we say biblical, and Jesus fasted for 40 days.
And it rained for 40 days.
It rained for 40 days. So it's
right. And so the boat's starting to float, and we're starting to pull the door up on the boat. And we've got all these people running around to people like you and me that have been doing this for a really long time going, what can we do? What can we do? Save us, save us, save us. I don't know. I've been trying to save you for 20 years. I've been around. I really have. I really haven't been hidden under a rock anywhere. Honestly, I haven't.
Our conspiracy theory minds are paying off finally. All that research in the dark when no one knew what we were doing and calling us crazy, and now they're running to us going, what is happening? I'm like, I'll show you exactly what's happening. It's right here. Completely fascinating.
And say, what can we do? What can we do? Well, I've said ever since, SB 277 came down the pike, which was in 2015, I've had a lot of concerns about no matter what we do, it's going to be kind of too little too late. Unless we really mobilize the masses, which I think is the most important thing that we need to be doing right now with our platforms. And everybody that's listening here that's got Facebook or Instagram or Twitter or your own website or maybe your own podcast or whatever it is, it's masses. We need millions of people, because I've done recently some work in Washington, D.C. with some pretty high level lobbyists, and they who are on our side, but feel like they've got their hands tied because they feel that most of Congress, even more the right of center people in Congress, feel like people who are standing up against vaccines, it's a really, really, really small group that just happens to be loud.
Right.
And what we really need to be able to show them is like, no, there's tens of millions of us. In fact, I'd really like to have all you guys go to Millions Against Medical Mandates. It's MAMM.org, I believe, and sign our petition against medical mandates. And so that's a place that we're gathering signatures. And I'm part of one of the founding members there. It's Millions Against Medical Mandates. And I think it's MAMM.org, or you should just Google Millions Against Medical Mandates and we need numbers. We need numbers from everybody to show that, until we can get organized enough and show that we are a united front, I honestly believe the president should not pay one bit of attention to us. And I love the president. I was been a fan of Trump back in the days of The Apprentice. I read The Art of the Deal that he wrote when he wrote it in the 80s.
It was actually a great book.
I've always kind of thought he was going to get here where he is. And so so we need numbers. We need numbers.
I just put the website. It's MAMMM.org, I think it is.
Yeah.
I just put that up. So that is a link that I just posted. And so we have a bunch of people on right now, and this will go pretty viral. So people will go sign that. So you have a bunch of people running to that right now, which is fantastic. I want to respect your time tonight. So I want to, as we come to a close, I want to ask you a question, because we want to do solutions. And I love that you're a glass half full, make lemonade out of lemons individual, because you're a wonderful, you are a wonderful human being for the stuff that you do. And a lot of people are like just thanking you, but
thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Awesome. When it comes to, and you can rant on this all you want to, I have no time limit, but I want to do something, because we always talk about herd immunity. That's what they always talk about. Now, this social distancing thing is trash.
Nonsense.
It's complete nonsense. But what are solutions? And give me your reason why that social distancing is nonsense. I understand it, but I want you to tell everybody else. but how do we get full herd immunity technically, or how do we actually get immunity? And then how are people actually supposed to live around each other? Because health comes from being around different people, picking things up, actually becoming immune naturally to something. So tell them about that.
Well, herd immunity, the term herd immunity was first used in about 1933. And it was done when there was a physician in Massachusetts who had done a longitudinal study of measles over about a 30-year period of time. And what he observed was that it appeared as though if 2/3 of the people had had natural measles, real measles infections, it appeared as though that protected the herd, meaning the very old and the very young. Now, keep in mind 2/3, so that's like 67%. And when it fell down below that 2/3 level, you'd see an uptick in, like, you'd have outbreaks of measles again, which was a fever and a rash, who cares? And the pharmaceutical industry has conveniently stolen that concept and applied it to vaccination. Only they say, they say that you need to have a 98% vaccination rate, because vaccines don't work in everybody, and there's vaccine failures, and some people don't seroconvert and get those nasty antibodies. So everybody has to be vaccinated at 98%. But it doesn't do anything, because, I mean, when you initially get vaccinated in those initial antibodies, maybe for the first week or two, it can block transmission, but those antibody levels fall and they eventually go away. And they're nothing more than a marker of contamination at that point, because you can have very high antibody levels and still contract the infection. So they don't really mean anything. And so all of this stuff they're talking about with this COVID-19, about everybody's got to get tested, everybody's got the whole big testing thing. I mean, I screamed on this. I just to tell your audience, I mean, this is, I've done 17 interviews in the last 10 days of various kinds, and podcasts.
Such a rock star. Such a rock star.
It's a lot. It's a lot of talking. It's a lot of talking. It's like, and I've said to people, like, what are they testing? I mean, when they very first started testing, they didn't even have the specific, SARS-CoV-2 virus in their testing. So they were just testing, and if things were positive, was it one of those 32 viruses that we may have been exposed to? And then they got more specific, and then they're doing antibody testing of IgG and IgM for that specific virus. So if it's IgM and you're asymptomatic, what does that mean? And what does that mean? And now they've mixed all the data together, so we're never going to know. And they don't have silos of data. And it's done in Europe and various places across the country. And then every day on the news, the death rate, the death rate, the death rate, the death rate. Believe me, people, that is a subconscious subliminal messaging control thing that they're doing. Because back in 2005, the CDC put out a paper called the 7-Step Recipe to Get People to Vaccinate. And one of the steps of that recipe is to use the word deadly over and over again. And so this whole death rate state has been planned out in their marketing plan for a long time. And the death rate is absolutely irrelevant unless you know the true denominator. I mean, if 100 people die and 1,000 people were sick, really sick, and 100 people die, that's a true 10% death rate. That's pretty serious. But if 100 people die and 1 million people were sick, it's like 0.00 something. It's a tiny little number. And if there's 10 million people who've been infected, but 80% of them aren't even sick enough to go to the doctor, and 100 people die, what does that really mean in terms of making public policy and shutting down the entire global economy and destroying families, destroying lives, destroying businesses? I mean, what does that mean? What are we doing? From when this very first started, Jason, the very first thing I said within the first week was, this is economic warfare. It has absolutely nothing to do with this virus. Absolutely nothing. Yep. And I've been proven to be right the longer that this goes on. Absolutely nothing. It's like, look over there, look to the right, look to the right, look to the right. But what's really going on is over here at the left. And it's all about economic warfare. It's about social control. This whole 6 feet social distancing thing, that was just a wet thumb to the wind guess when they said 6 feet. I mean, and so I had read somewhere that was the distance of a dead body is what they kind of like came up with. And so, I mean, it wasn't like they, squirted some virus up somebody's nose and then, gave them some pepper and let them sneeze. and see how far those sputum, those viruses transmitted. They didn't do any testing on that. They just said 6 feet. And then the other psychological psyops is calling it social distancing.
Yep.
They didn't say space or physical distancing, or this is a good idea for physical space. Social distancing. Humans are social animals. Humans are mammals that like to hug and kiss and high five and do all these touchy sort of things. It's part of who we are as a species. Now they've suddenly wanted to destroy that. And if it was so horrible and we were always so contagious, why is it that the millions of people that fly on airplanes every year, that they're not sitting on an 8-hour flight and they're walking down the jetway and they just, at least 3 or 4 of them fall over dead?
If the germ theory were correct, we would most likely all be dead.
Exactly. So, I mean, this whole thing in there that we don't really know about the aggressiveness of this particular virus. We don't know if once you've recovered from it, is it lifetime? Or is it like getting the flu where they tell you, oh, we don't think it's lifetime. You got to get your annual flu shot every single year because, oh, it might change, it might morph. I mean, seriously, we get the government we deserve, man. I so totally agree with you that at the very beginning of this, the entire nation, instead of like going into fear-based space, should have said, stop, wait a minute. Yep. And I use this analogy. There's a little video that I use. It's a little video enactment of a tsunami. So at the beginning of a tsunami, there's this big inhale, like, the water comes back from the shore. And that's kind of like what we did as a society. Everybody did this big inhale, like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, what's happening? And this and that, and get my food and get my fruit and get my kids. And it's just like this, and then we kind of did that for a couple weeks. And then all of the citizen journalists got busy. Everybody that has a phone is a citizen or has a webcast or has a podcast. And they started doing this. And then we started digging through the medical literature. And the anger and the power was starting to evolve. And I think we are now headed into the real tsunami, where people are going to say, I'm mad as hell and I'm not going to take this anymore. I mean, look what's happened yesterday in Michigan, what happened today in Minnesota and Wisconsin. And we had a little rally here in Ohio that sort of kicked it off. And I listened to a Facebook Live this morning of a guy local to me here. I'm in Cleveland, and he's just south of here in Norwalk, which is about 35 minutes south of Cleveland. And I heard him on the radio this morning, and he owns, it's called Sports Motor or something or another. He owns a racetrack. Mm-hmm. And he does a lot. And he told his whole story about how he had 45 employees. He had 60 employees that did this. They had all these events. And he talked about what it took to build up this thing. He put $1.3 million in the last year into his business because they were expanding all these things. He said, I had to lay everybody off. Ugh. He said, there's 5 of us left, me and my son and 3 employees. And I paid all their health insurance. I paid all their benefits. And it's over. I mean, my life and my business is over. And so I made he said, and yesterday, DeWine came out, our governor came out and said, 2 to 3 more weeks of social isolation. And our Anton, our stupid idiot public health person who says, you're going to have to get used to the new normal, wearing a mask all the time, just like taking your shoes off at the airport. This is like the new normal. And I was like, no, it's not. We can't do this. And this guy, his name was Bill. I don't remember what his last name was, but he said, so, Governor DeWine, I'm opening my business and I'm not doing social distancing. And we have all of these big events that are happening. And I had somebody who told me that if we expect the government to fix this for this, we're all screwed. And we're a small to medium-sized business, and we are not doing this. We're not. And in fact, Governor DeWine, this is where I live. And he gave his street address. He said, you want to come and arrest me? Come and arrest me. But I am not going to watch multi-generations of my family go away over a big fat nothing of what this virus is. It's not even as bad as a normal flu season. I'm not doing it. And I was just thinking, we need a lot of business owners to grow some balls and do that. And not open their stores and have 18 feet away and have their waitresses. I mean, seriously, people, we have set ourselves up, Dr. Jason, so that we're not going to be doing this every flu season. Right.
I think we hit the wall. I like, you're exactly right. Everyone went into fear, and everyone also, the numbers started not making sense. and they don't make sense. And now everyone, I think, and you have the states, and the president said, like, basically the states are up, it's up to the states, which is constitutional. And then he said, you open it how you want to, knowing full well the more liberal deep state side is not going to do it, and they're going to make up excuses, etc. Whereas we're more conservative, and I'm not necessarily Democrat liberal or Democrat Republican person because I don't love the two-party system. However, he knew full well what was going to happen. But people, I think, know enough now, and they won't take another one of these. They are people. You piss them off.
And it's like, no, you're not doing that. You're not destroying me again. It's not happening. I mean, first of all, it's just not happening. I mean, there's 1.5 million people applied for that PPP, and they're out of money.
Yep.
And so a lot of the people that applied aren't even going to get any money. And this guy that I was listening to today from that sports place or that car place, he said, there's none of these things apply to me, none of them. And there's no money there for me. And this is not, I'm not going to take this down. It's not going to be happening. And I think we're going to start seeing more and more of that, Jason, across the country, where people can read the numbers. They can read this. They can read all of the studies and all of the stats, just like you and I can. And more people that are sort of exposing it, I think that they're going to go, nope, not doing this again. Take your mask, take your gloves. Yes, some people are going to die, but guess what? 30,000 people die in the flu. How many people die every weekend in the south side of Chicago in gun battles? How many people die falling off of ladders? How many people die of abortions? I just posted that off of that world spot thing that talks about all these people that have died. I mean, COVID is way down at the bottom. So it's just time that people, and I hope that all your audience here will get really bold and brave. And just, I think that some of the good things that came out of this is an awareness. Some of the idea we've allowed our government to do this to us. Who are you, governor and person that's head of the public health department that wasn't even elected, shut down and ruined my life? Didn't allow my kids to graduate this year, didn't allow my kids to progress to the next class. They're going to have to repeat it. How is that going to affect them long-term in their careers? The person who was the valedictorian in their class, they're not even going to get to do the valedictorian thing. All those kids that were supposed to graduate with sports scholarships and go on to college, all those people that were graduating from college and going into master's and PhD programs. I mean, the ripple effect of this in every industry, the supply chain in every sort of industry that you can think of, is just nonsensical. And I said to somebody the other day, I said, if you have a freight train, let's say that there's 50 cars in that train, and you pull it to a dead stop, and you want it to get going again, how long does it take for that last car to start to roll, right? A really long time.
Long time.
The other good thing that I thought so that's the bad things. The good things that have come out of this is that, and I kind of want to close with this with you.
Yep, I was going to say the same thing. Every single person listening or is going to listen can fill in the gap on this statement. If I only had the time, I would do X. I would clean out the garage. I would clean out the closets. I would take all those pictures that I've had from vacations and trips and put them in albums. I'd do a genealogy research. I've always kind of wanted to get into that. I've always wanted to learn how to knit. I've always wanted to do quilting. Well, guess what? You've got the time. And maybe it's time to get your house in order. Maybe God has put us at a full stop to get our physical house in order, our physical body in order in terms of our food and diet and exercise, and our spiritual life in order, to get, to have real conversations with your kids. I've heard some people on the radio saying things like they've been playing card games and playing, board games, or they've been doing puzzles, and they've been having real conversations for the first time because they're not running around to 3 different sports and 2 different music events. Right. And maybe they're going to decide when things open back up that, kids, you're going to pick one sporting event. You're not going to be in 3 and all these other things. That's it. Maybe have a family dinner.
Have a family dinner. You maybe had a real conversation with your spouse, or your significant other. I mean, all of those things. And I really feel strongly. I mean, maybe this was, if we're heading into some really tough times, biblically projected tough times, maybe this was a God thing to kind of put everybody in their house and get their mental, physical, and spiritual house in order for the next couple of years. Now is the time to kind of like do that, take a full stop and get it all in order before you get back on the treadmill again.
Beautifully, so well said. You are a rock star in every sense of the word. You're a patriot, you're a warrior. Like, everyone loves you to death. You have just picked up so many more people who not only just going to follow you, but they're going to do what you said, which is they're going to go research. I am super thankful for that, because you just sent a wave across the planet for regrowth, rebirth, everything. It's amazing. Where can people find you? You said it earlier, but restate it. And where can you go? Websites, the training, etc. Give that all out, and we'll post links too.
Well, the three most easiest places where people can find me is on Instagram. So it's Dr. Tenpenny on Instagram, DrTenpenny, like it's up there in the thing. Just Dr. Tenpenny, no periods or anything. Just Dr. Tenpenny. Come over and join us on Instagram. We're really growing that. The second place is Vaxxter.com, VAXXTER.com. That's my regular website where we have real writers and we do lots of really interesting, in-depth, detailed articles over there. And you can sign up for our website there at Vaxxter.com, so you can get all the alerts about, our boot camp and all the different things we're doing. And you can sign up right there, and you can donate to the cause. I mean, I've got employees and that would like to stay in business. If you like what we're doing here, support the people that you like. And, you can donate at Vaxxter to support what we're doing, and we would really appreciate that. I mean, every little bit counts. And then if you want to see the full gamut of all the different internet properties and all the things we do, go to coursesformastery.com, which is courses, the number 4, mastery.com. And that is a landing page that shows you all the different websites and all the different things that we're doing there. So we would love to have you all joining us and viral this out. Take this whole video and viral it out. Drive people over to Dr. Jason's practice and all the stuff that he does, and for all of you guys, and send people to us on the internet. We'd really appreciate it.
Yeah, and some people asked out there too is, do we detox kids? Yes, we absolutely do detox kids. I don't know if Dr. Tenpenny does, but either way, reach out to both of us. We do that service as well as much as we can. I never promise, obviously, cures. I can't do that, obviously, and I don't, because the body doesn't work that way. And if you have autism, your child has autism, we can do our best to regain as much as we can of them, but to go back to normal, I mean, there's been damage done. So we do the best you can, and you always improve quality of life. So Dr. Tenpenny, you are amazing. Everyone is going off. This will go viral. I'm actually going to download this immediately afterwards so it doesn't go away, because this is like gold material. But thank you from the bottom of our hearts and everyone listening and watching for everything you do.
Thank you so much. And thank you for, I've been noting a little bit of the comments over here a little bit, and I appreciate the love, guys. I appreciate it. Thank you so much. I appreciate being here, and take care, and maybe we'll do this again sometime. You got it. I'll reach out. You've been amazing. Dr. Jason Dean, Revolution Network with Dr. Sherri Tenpenny. Guys, have a great evening. I'll be on later to do a little bit of live, but spread this to all your friends. Educate as much as possible. As I always say, the more positive we can push out there, we will push this over the edge and make it go our way. So please send this amazing energy out there, and let's heal the world. Have a good night. Take care. Thank you. Take care.